I would like to ask members of the audience who are joining us online to please keep yourselves on mute until you, excuse me, until you are called to provide public testimony. There is one time this evening designated for public testimony and will be listed as business from the audience on the agenda. If you are joining us online with a tablet, smartphone, or computer and wish to speak during that time, please use the raise hand option to be called upon to provide comment when the designated time is announced. When we will call on you, please state your name and area of general location for the record. The order of public testimony is as follows: anyone who has raised their hand. 2, anyone who has submitted email in advance. If there is remaining time, Neil will read the emails into the record. 3, anyone who has submitted written comment via mail in advance. If there is remaining time, same thing, giving me the same thing all over again. Will remain comment in the record. May I please have roll call?
Mayor Van Gordon.
Here.
Commissioner Burney. Councilor.
Today's Bernie's birthday.
Councilors Pitts.
Here.
Mo.
Here.
Rodley.
Here.
Stair.
Here.
Woodrow.
Here.
Visionary.
Here.
Colby Phillips. Tina Patel.
Here.
Luke Lundberg.
Here.
George Jesse.
Here.
Darlene Reich.
Here.
Stephen Schmunk.
Here.
Holly Shaper.
Here.
Paul Selby.
Here.
Chair, we have 14 members present and we have a quorum.
All righty. Our next order of business is election of officers. I ask for a nomination for the position of chair.
I'd like to nominate whoever our chair is for the, I guess Luke would be our chair, so he could be the chair for SEDA. budget
Okay,
board.
we've done that in the past. That would, okay.
I
I'll
second.
I'll second that. I was gonna
All right.
nominate you, Tina. Too late.
Next year.
Let's see. Okay, so we have one nominee. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All right,
Aye.
Any opposed? Then we don't need a roll call vote. And ask for nominee for vice chair.
now's when you nominate Tina.
Yes, I second that.
Okay, so I have a nomination for Tina and a second. Are there any other nominees? So I would, and all in favor, say aye.
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 Anybody not in favor? So we don't have a roll call vote. So we have Chair Luke Lundberg and we have Vice Chair Tina Patel. And at this point, I will turn the meeting over to Luke.
Thank you so much, Miley.
You bet.
All right. So new business, opening comments provided by Nathan Bell.
All right, welcome everyone. I'm Nathan Bell, the finance director for the city. Tonight, we're going to be doing the SEDA budget process. It's pretty much the same as the city process. It's just pared down, a shorter time frame. But we have the same motions that you'll need to make at the end of the evening. We're going to have a budget message and a department presentation. It's both are going to be made by city staff, Courtney Griesel. I encourage you to ask questions throughout. I'm not just saying that. I actually checked in with Courtney. She's fine if you ask during the presentation. Raise your hand the same way we have for the city process, you know, down on the screen with the hand raised, and the chair, Luke Lundberg, will call on you. When you're ready at the end of the meeting, there are two motions that you'll need to make to move this budget forward to the SEDA board for adoption at a later date. And that's it for me. We set aside 60 minutes for this process. after which we'll take a quick break and then reconvene as the city budget committee. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Courtney.
Thanks. It's odd to say that, like, I really look forward to this presentation, but I think it's because we get to do some of the most exciting work. And this is a pretty amazing moment to talk about it, and also just engage at the line level detail, which is also a place that I get excited, which is why it's good I'm in the job, I guess. So I'm going to share my screen briefly and echo Nathan's statement that do please raise hand, and I will look to you, Luke. You just jump in and interrupt me at any point, and I'll be happy to pause. So the city of Springfield has 2 urban renewal areas. I'll zoom this in a little bit, maybe just hit play. There we go. City of Springfield has 2 urban renewal areas, downtown and Glenwood. Glenwood is actually our oldest of the 2, and so I tend to start there, kind of start at the beginning, if you will. Although they are both relatively similar in age. We're talking established within about 5 years of each other. Before we sort of jump into it, I always think it's good to revisit the sort of shape or fundamentals of how urban renewal really exists. And it's this idea that the community came together in a point of time and voted that in fact a certain area did deserve some special attention, and the way that we would go about providing that attention was through an urban renewal district or a tax increment financing district. And so at that moment, we went to the voters and said, for example, in Glenwood, is this a district you'd like to create? And the voters said overwhelmingly yes. And in fact, they said yes twice, once for Glenwood and once for downtown. And something I also flag is that's unique. Not every urban renewal area in Oregon has to go to the voters for review and approval. It's actually very rare. And so something I'm very proud of for our community, that we take that extra step. At the point that the district is created, the assessors look at the whole boundary and everything within it, and they freeze that value, that moment in time. And they say, from this day forward, this frozen base will continue to go to the taxing agencies, as it already does, but anything generated above, any growth, will go to the urban renewal district, and it must be used to go right back into the district for redevelopment work, and specifically for redevelopment work that continues that cycle of growth. So not for the construction necessarily of a public facility, but the construction of a facility that benefits sort of private taxable development. So we'll talk about things like the frozen base throughout. And we do quite a bit of analysis when we set it. It's not just that any increment forever can go to it. It's any growth up to a certain point. And that certain point is defined by how we can take the growth and borrow with it. So it's an increment district focused on creating increment to actually go borrow with. So we can borrow, make big investments today, and pay it off over time. And what we call that is maximum indebtedness. So if you look at the moment in time here, I have to move all of your lovely faces. Sorry. This is the moment in time that the voters said, yes, let's do something. Over time, those values started to grow. And this is just kind of an average trend chart. And then at this moment in time, what we have said is our maximum indebtedness has been reached. We have gone out and borrowed and spent as much as the plan we agreed to in the plan, and we told the voters we would, and we can spend no more. So it's time to sunset the district, and all of these funds now go back to the different agencies. So that's kind of like a deep dive elevator pitch sort of into the economics that get me up every day. So these are our 2 districts, downtown and then Glenwood. we'll talk about what they are, actually the specifics of each of their numbers, but it's interesting, downtown actually has a higher maximum indebtedness than Glenwood. And part of that's just that the moment it was created, the value that day was even higher than Glenwood. It had a lot more history of infrastructure investments already on board, and it was already incorporated to the city or annexed to the city. But we'll start in Glenwood, which was really where I started my career focusing on urban renewal, and I kind of affectionately refer to it as the pork chop. And then I always like to show what our actual trend line looks like. It's great to see the academic one, but I think it's even better to see what it really looks like in our districts. So they're going the right direction, although they don't have that kind of lovely sweeping curve in the academic version, a little bit more gradual over time. And then you see in downtown, you see some fits and starts, and we'll kind of talk about why that is a bit. The other thing that we're missing in these trend charts, because we've finally gotten so far away from it, is we're missing the sort of 2008, 2009 fallouts. And so both of our districts really stalled on coming out of the recession, as many places did, but that does impact an urban renewal area. So Glenwood. At the day that the voters said yes, if you will, the frozen base of that entire pork chop was assessed at about 106 million. Or that was the frozen base of taxes coming in, I apologize. So those $106 million in taxes continue to disperse to organizations throughout. And at this point where we're at, as we've grown over time in FY21, our estimated increment to the district to do work is at $1 million. So that means every year these funds come in. In some cases, they are already committed to projects. We have done a borrow in Glenwood already. And in other cases, they're moving into reserves or into actual programs. As we look at FY22, the numbers that we're watching is what we estimate the taxable value of the district will be, which is at about 190 million. And that will result in 1.1 to the district for the FY22 budget. So on day one, we have $0. Year one of the district, we have $0. In FY22, we now estimate we're anticipating about 1.1 million. And Luke, I'm watching you. I can see you in my Hollywood Square. So you let me know if there's questions. Kind of some geography of it, about 400 acres in total. For us, that sort of start date was January 1 of 2005. The voters approved it that November before. And the plan really outlined a strong focus on industrial, commercial and residential development, but also a lot of core infrastructure in open space. The plan, when created, placed about a $33 million maximum indebtedness. So over its entire life, the expectation is we would spend $33 million and we would likely do it through substantial bank borrows. To date, the district has spent almost half, a little less than half. And that's significant to note because we have spent a decent amount in property acquisition and some investments as well in infrastructure and in refinement planning work. And then I think I heard Tina, she and I were hearing folks talk about the hotels. This is an exciting corner for us. This is one of those hotels in Glenwood where SEDA actually purchased the properties and then negotiated the initial set of transactions with the Patel family. And they have been an incredible partner to the community throughout opening this particular facility, even in the middle of COVID, and taking on victims of the fire, actually. So that was one of those pieces that it came online and they were there to make it available. The other types of projects that we do is quite a bit of right-of-way road, taking county roads or unimproved roads and starting to ready them for redevelopment. So what you end up starting to see is, just click forward, that our program really does focus on that infrastructure and land use. We also have a systems development charge program that the Urban Renewal District runs. This partners with businesses who are coming in and developing. They may need to pay for infrastructure fees. And so the Urban Renewal program will pick those up. We will pay them to the city. And the hotels have used that, the bakery, these are oftentimes benefits that really help them make that decision about making the investment in the site, maybe making it a little grander than they might have before. And then we do actually do quite a bit of expansion and recruitment work in Glenwood. The bakery, both the recruitment of the bakery, the expansion of the bakery, and then you see an image in the corner here of the Weyerhaeuser headquarter project, which is under construction right now. This is kind of an image highlighting where some of that work is. So the Weyerhaeuser construction project that I just noted here, the headquarters is down here. It'll be one of the first new construction pieces on that site. It did require pretty robust partnership with SEDA and the city in adjusting some of the right-of-way, and it is directly facing really some of the largest opportunity employment lands in the region, if not the state, along the I-5 corridor. The hotel projects up here on the corner. And this continues to be a focus for us, the land assembly on the North River front, with the board actually taking action last night to authorize the purchase of kind of what now looks like this little leg coming off. So as we move forward and we look at the budget, I think I see a hand.
Yeah, I was just about to say.
Sorry.
George?
Yeah, I just had a quick question on that land assembly infrastructure area. I've been by it a number of times and was curious, I don't know if this is appropriate time, but curious what is going on the old wildish land there on the east side of McVeigh.
Yeah, so they're taking down plant one. I think that's probably what you're mentioning. They're actually pulling down the old building and they are what we call, they're balancing the site. So as part of that work to get the site ready to accept development, the site had to come up out of the floodway. So they have been working with FEMA and the Army Corps and the city for a number of years and finally received a letter of map revision that allows them to lift the soil out of the floodway and make it developable. So right now they're hauling, I mean, what better owner to do that than one who happens to own lots of gravel and dirt. So they are hauling truckloads after truckloads of dirt to start bringing that up and leveling it. We don't have currently a prospective tenant or development on this site. Part of that is a strategic effort that they're getting ready before we start marketing it heavily. But they are also pulling the building down, which I think is an emotional building for them because that's where they started, but they do know it is time.
Okay.
Steve Wildish's grandfather built that. Tom Wildish Sr.
Yeah, it
Well,
is
it looks like
definitely
they're
their
actually
origin.
cutting in. Looks like they're actually cutting in some of the road beds in there. Is that something that's their funding or is SEDA involved in that?
I don't think they're permanent road beds. I think they are cutting in paths of travel. Who would fund internal roads into that site would be determined as we move forward with an actual development.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. But I will note that there are some budget expenditures that show up in the line detail for this work at the intersection and along the corridor, but not into the interior of the site in this coming year or in the last fiscal year. Most of it's been focused on the corner here and the corridor itself.
Thank you.
Yeah, good questions though. And it kind of gets to that next piece as we go into FY22. Really what we are looking at in the budget is continued work on the riverfront land assembly, but also expenditures related to what it will actually take to move into future redevelopment of the site with a development partner. The other piece that we're going to continue focusing on is that Franklin McVeigh corridor area. We're kind of calling it the employment corridor area, but there's great opportunity to get that site that we were just talking about ready and recruited to, and we have a very excited partner to work on it. I'm going to go, we can kind of come back to these towards the end. I like to have them up here if we want to have any questions on them as we're moving through. But I'm going to shift over to downtown if that's okay with folks.
Let me ask a question.
Sure.
This is on Glenwood. And I'll say it, I'll bring it up once and then I probably won't say it anymore. Assets, for SEDA assets in Glenwood. I believe we spent around $500,000 or $600,000 designing a parking structure for Glenwood. Is that worth anything?
Yeah, it's worth the value of the design. The design is, it is.
For who?
So it's worth the value. The design is still solid. I think there's a conversation to be had with the SEDA board about the direction they'd like to go. The project paused to give consideration to the track and then to some interested development. But there definitely is an opportunity to pivot back and revisit that asset and whether the board wants to put it back into use.
Realistically, I don't think that'll ever happen. So anyway, thank you.
Yeah. And it'll be, as we talk about downtown, are there any other questions on Glenwood before I? Okay. I just see you, Luke, so I see you saying no. So we'll go over in downtown, and actually the parking garage will kind of come up again. Downtown taxable growth. So similarly, you're seeing a little bit of that trend. And we start to see some of the dips and falls. You can actually, in a district like downtown, and really in any of them, we are very sensitive to some of the larger users. So if something occurs at one of the larger sites, our tax rolls feels it. So for example, you can kind of see in the dips and the cycles of removal of equipment where the Swanson's Mill burned down. It was on the district within the boundary, and it's a substantial piece of property with a large amount of valuable equipment and building. And so that is felt in our tax rolls. And so will be when they come back onto the tax rolls. And so that's something that I always kind of keep flagged right now is our partnership with them to ensure that they would rebuild. The other thing that we anticipate we may start to see is we had a larger user in downtown, Greenbrier Rail, also move out of downtown. And that may create a little bit of blip that we'll see here, possibly if not in FY22, but in FY23. So a little bit about downtown. Remember, Glenwood was 400 acres. We're at 600 in downtown. Glenwood 2004 to 2005. And so a couple years later, we start with downtown in 2007, and then day one being 2008. This really had a focus to be mixed use commercial and residential, less of the industrial push, but acknowledging that it was already a retail and commercial core and that the district would continue to build that momentum. And it has a larger maximum indebtedness. So really the district expects to spend about 43 million over its life. And to date, we're at about 5.5. It is also a kind of an interesting program. It has a little bit more of a social and networking sense to it because the downtown core does exist. And so a lot of what we're also doing is convening property owners and businesses to create that network so that they're talking with one another. We're crafting programs that make sense for their actual needs, that they have an advocate at the city or a point of contact. And we can really help them sort of realize when they'd like to make an investment in the building or when there's an opportunity to take a site to a slightly higher and better use. Something I will highlight, downtown sort of became a community center, if you will, in the last year for a place to be and still meet social distancing needs, but also it allowed us to test some citywide programs around modified services, social distancing, and also personal protective equipment. So I just flag a couple images. Our staff, I have to kind of note Vahana Keen is our key staff in downtown, and she has been a phenomenal leader and carried a lot of water in the last year, working directly with businesses, often really even citywide. And we have distributed, about 250 personal protective equipment care packages to businesses. We will actually deliver them. They do also pick them up. I think the numbers end up being, like 15,000 gloves, and it's just insane. But truly wonderful that they know where they can go. And I think she had 35 deliveries just last week. So this is something that we have been very active in. Also outdoor seating, cafe seating, making sure businesses can get as many tables as possible safely. And we were one of the first communities really in Oregon that I think on March 20th of last year put curbside pickup signs on every block face, and just sort of took it very serious, very quick. So those systems were in place, and also placed them on request. And this is a picture from about 2 weeks ago. Our ops crews accepted another delivery of PPE from the state. And so they're unloading it off the truck. And for some reason that makes me laugh. So I thought I'd share it. Just some of the projects that we're working on, and then that you'll see in the budget lines. Again, I always highlight the mill rebuild. Right now, the mill is using the city's enterprise zone, which is a tax abatement program. It's a 5-year tax abatement, but they've also built a 50-year mill, probably one of the most advanced plywood manufacturing facilities in North America. And this facility, they have been running at full steam through COVID, except for about 3 weeks. And really, because of the timing of constructing this type of facility, are they able to be so nimble and efficient, because it's set up with safety and social distancing and to really maximize space. When this mill comes on, we'll see a pretty significant bump to revenues of the district, and we expect that in about 2 years. The other focus is really in the last year, aside from PPE and just general networking and being present for businesses, are around 2 property purchases. The district purchased the Memorial Building in December. This was a site that had gone up for sale, and Willamette Lane was really needing to sell it to assist with some of their budget needs and impacts of COVID. And then also a purchase of property from Sub. Sub had desired to sell this in exchange for purchasing a city parking lot. Both of these, moving forward, SEDA will want to start strategizing about how to put these into redevelopment and reuse. And then another large project that's also going to impact FY22's budget is the downtown Blue Mackenzie project. We talked about it as the Sheer Buick site as well. And SEDA took action during FY21 to authorize lending to this project. So it's common that these partnerships end up looking like a grant. The board expressed that they were not interested in a grant and instead were open to lending. And so the site has shifted to that type of relationship. And this project would go into pre-development over the next 12 months. And then the other piece that we continue to partner with folks on really everywhere, but is site readiness as it relates to environmental assessments. So that'll be a piece that I highlight, a piece down here on the river where we're continuing to assist Norms Auto with the assessment of kind of some known contamination on the site and really understanding what we can do to move that forward into a healthy and adaptive reuse. I do want to highlight parking. The downtown program does manage a parking program. We moved into full enforcement in FY20, and then COVID hit, which was quite unfortunate. This had been a planned build to full enforcement. We had been enforcing at about halftime up to. And so that's why the admin costs increased from 90,000 to 125. But then you also saw our revenues drop off. The city made the decision to completely halt citation while we continued to do enforcement and staff continued to walk the streets and engage with property owners and parkers and also provide resources. They were not issuing tickets. And we only have started reissuing of tickets in the last several months. So we are going to have 2 years of revenue sort of falling back to almost a startup phase, but we look forward to kind of getting back to normal operations and also future reinvestments in sort of parking infrastructure, pay to park, resources, and just more convenient technologies. But those things are not yet in the FY22 budget. We're looking at that a little further out. And then moving forward, you will see quite a bit of work where we are starting to budget for downtown is related to the Shearer building, getting ready for that pre-development loan, and also anticipating some future expenses as we take ownership of the 2 sites that were purchased and start to move them into redevelopment. The other thing we do expect some expenditures on are related to a downtown fiber project. Where we're working to invest in sort of a meet me point, if you will, to bring fiber into downtown publicly owned so that it's accessible for providers. So that was a lot of you listening to me. And I am open to questions, and I have kind of both documents up if it's helpful, but I can drop my screen for now.
Okay.
I'm biased. I'm biased, but I think we've done a wonderful job downtown Springfield. So great. Congratulations, Courtney.
Darlene.
I think you're on mute.
There. I'm using my tablet, so it's a little bit different. I just want a little more clarification on the Shearer building downtown. Did I understand that's going to be commercial and then also some housing or something on top?
Sure, bless you. So yes, it will be mixed use. So the ground floor will be commercial, and then the upper 7 floors will be residential.
Mm.
That answer your question, Darlene?
Yeah, it just seemed kind of like a big building out. I don't know, kind of out of portion with the rest of downtown, but anyway.
So that's you're correct. It is the tallest building. It would be the tallest building in downtown, and actually, it would be the tallest residential building of that type, or meaning residential building in Springfield, and that is really intentional in the sense that that height is not uncommon in most cities of our size, but for some reason, Springfield has been somewhat stunted and has not been able to realize those types of projects. And so that kind of holds us back to get some of that housing at that density and the limited land that we have. So it's just kind of a little bit of a strategy perspective on that.
Councilor Woodruff?
Yes, I had a question come in from email yesterday asking about the potential of parking associated with the Blue Mackenzie project. And I wasn't exactly sure how to respond to her as far as the phasing and what the possibility was.
So the project will have dedicated off-street parking. It will come online at the same time. So it's if folks are thinking about where the Buick dealership was, there's the vacant spot right next to it, and that's where the building will go. But behind it is the old lot that was used. It's about a quarter of a block, and that site will be leased by the apartments and will be for those tenants. The other element, downtown does not have a parking requirement by code. And so developments are not required to build it. It is why we invest heavily in the transit system and bikes and just walkability to really encourage that. But the urban renewal plan does outline that there may be a point in time where SEDA should be thinking about the construction of a parking facility to really encourage people to move away from surface lots and start to consolidate And so that will probably be an initiative in front of this board, in front of the SEDA board, in the relative future.
Okay. Her main concern was putting all those tenants downtown and where were they going to park? So
Yeah.
that's it. That was the answer she was looking for.
It's the developer and the bank's concern too.
How do I get rid of the hand?
I think I can lower it for you, maybe.
There you go.
Excellent. Okay, and Steve?
Yes, thanks. Courtney, so back to the Glen, am I muted?
Nope, we can hear you.
Hear me okay? So back to the Glenwood site, the property adjacent west of the Wildish property, sounds like the Wildish property is going up, which effectively sinks the adjacent property. Is that a concern to the city budget-wise?
Do we mean sink literally by water?
No, yeah, it's levels. Its level is effectively going to go down adjacent to the adjacent property, which it already has drainage issues or has had. Is that correct?
So I don't know that that's correct, but I do know that part of the process of receiving that letter of map revision and all that work with FEMA for the permit and the Army Corps is that they did a complete evaluation of how to ensure that their adjustment of their elevation also included very highly engineered bank work so that it would not push into that neighboring property. So ultimately, the finding is that it will not have an impact based on how they're going to do that leveling work.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay. Any other questions for Courtney at this time? George.
I guess it's not really a question, but I used to live in the city of Eugene and worked with the city of Eugene for many years and saw a number of areas where it seemed like some of the programs they had over subsidized private investments. And I'm not directly involved with SEDA, so I don't know how that goes. The projects I've seen so far look very good, but just a caution that it's pretty easy to get sucked in and over subsidize some of the developments that don't pan out long term. And just for whatever it's worth, I wanted to throw that out.
Worth a lot. I appreciate the feedback.
Anyone else? Oh, Mayor Van Gordon.
I just want to comment that, you know, that obviously the SEDA budget, it looks really solid. We've got a lot of great things going on, but every time you put the assessed value sort of tables up, that really sort of speaks to all the work that we're doing, is that the total value of all these properties continues to rise, which is what our goal is. And, you know, downtown has been, you know, a real gem, but I think we're doing all the pre-work that we need to do in Glenwood to really make it go in the next couple of years.
And Holly.
I couldn't get my mute button. I was just going to ask again about the parking. I was thinking about it. And it looks like there's revenue loss because of lack of enforcement over the past couple of years, which makes sense given the pandemic. Is there a point at which it makes sense to have parking be a revenue generator by paid parking downtown as opposed to free parking? So meters and whatnot. Yeah.
You and I are making friends in this conversation. Folks get excited about meters. So there may be that point. There's a couple ways that we really think about the parking enforcement. It's sort of in a startup phase. When we moved into full enforcement, it's sort of back in that startup where it's not going to balance right away. What we know, we need to add a couple benefits. So first, the paid parking that we would add would be in the theme of sort of a voluntary benefit. So there is already permit lots, which are paid, but we really do have a need to add some hourly parking, not that it's on street paid, but off street option. So if someone wants to get their hair done, or they want to get a tattoo, or something that's going to take longer than 3 hours, then it'd be great for them to have a spot, and also we can add some revenue to it. And so those are areas that we had forecasted growing into prior to COVID, and we will sort of resume that work to move into it. And there may be a point in time where we have finally hit kind of that right moment to engage with downtown about starting to put paid parking on street. But it is a sensitive process, and it would take a lot of engagement with the council to see if that's the direction of that infrastructure, if we've hit that point yet. Our goal is to break even in the next several years. That's my first set of goals.
Okay. Councilor Fishneri?
Just to preface that last conversation, you're going to have to convince this counselor that meter parking is worth doing.
I know.
So just so you know that, I saw that, been through that, all of downtown Eugene, it still suffers. I ran a business downtown Eugene for many, many years, and it was free parking, then not free parking, then meter parking. And there's still businesses currently that are suffered and continue to suffer because of meter parking. So anyway, I'll listen.
I know. We'll share it, and then the council says no, or they say yes, but
It takes a consensus. But anyway, I just thought to give you a heads up.
Councilor Mo?
Council Pictionary said exactly what I'm going to say. The situation of parking, paid parking goes back and forth over the years. You've got meters in, you got to enforce them. The cost of enforcement is more than the revenue you get from the meters. It's pretty complex, and the city doesn't want to lose money on it. We don't want to lose customers downtown either. So it's an ongoing problem, which I hope we can find a solution. Electric cars or buses, Holly, you like that, and that's our future. So thank you.
All right. Any other questions for Courtney at this time? Nope. All right. Thank you so much, Courtney. All right. So next steps are, I have written down as public comment. Is that correct? So business from the audience, or is that the same? Okay.
So Chair, I just allowed the members of the audience to raise. Chair, it looks like we have no members of the audience wishing to speak. We also have no written or email comment at this time.
Okay. Thank you. All right. So we can go ahead and move on then. So the next step will be deliberation. If we have any issues that we need to bring up now, do we want to see changes?
What we'll do is we'll bring up our worksheet for errata. And typically we bring up a blank worksheet, but this year we have it pre-populated with some items. Some items came to our attention after we put the budget together, but before the budget will be adopted, and we're required to include those in the adopted budget. So Neil, if you can bring up the SEDA worksheet. And so what I'd like to do is just read through these and then ask for a motion and a second to accept these, so that it kind of delineates any adjustments that you might make to the SEDA budget. So the first one is to increase property tax expense. This is for a property we are acquiring and will be required to pay property taxes on. We're decreasing reserves to fund that. The second one is to increase interfund loan revenue by $1.5 million. And then offsetting expenditures increase the Blue McKinsey project expense. This is the actual loan that we're making to Blue McKinsey for $1.39 million, and increase contractual services that is related to that loan of $110,000. The third item is to increase the interfund loan principal payment. So when we do an interfund loan, and we've just to kind of high level explain this, we've set up an interfund loan between the city and SEDA at $1.5 million. And then SEDA is required to pay it back with its property tax revenues. So that's what this $850,000 is for. And then increase interfund loan interest payment. We do charge an interest on that interfund loan. We set it at our local government investment pool rate. And then decrease reserves by $853,500 to cover that. And the reason we're decreasing reserves is the property tax receipts have already been budgeted in this budget. But otherwise, we would be offsetting that interfund loan with property tax proceeds. And then the fourth item is increase environmental assessment expense of $20,000, decrease reserves to cover that environmental assessment. And I'm going to let Courtney speak to what that is for.
So I'll differentiate. There's two property transactions happening on this erratum. The first one, the Glenwood SEDA property taxes, that property has already been purchased and that purchase was in the budget. But we did not include the estimated property taxes that would come due on it. The number 4 is a separate property purchase that the board authorized yesterday, but the final purchase price is not yet fully determined. And we will need to do an environmental assessment to get to that final purchase price. Although I will say that we would deduct this cost from the purchase price that we come to. So that's why we are doing this erratum on the environmental.
All right, thank you, Courtney. So I'm looking for a motion to accept these adjustments that we've made on this errata.
I would make the motion, but I don't know what to call it.
Just say so moved.
Well, the SEDA budget erratum worksheet, fiscal year 22, I would make a motion that we approve it. Does that work?
That works.
Second the motion.
I'll second it.
All right, we can just do a voice vote. All in favor, say aye.
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 Any nays? All right, ayes have it, and it was passed. So
And then we'll be reading through this as part of the adoption of the budget as a whole. Just for the record, we'll read through it again. I just wanted, because we pre-populated this, for a formal acceptance of our pre-population. So at this point, it's back to you, Luke, to entertain any motions for any adjustments that you might want to make with this budget.
It's a budget meeting right now.
okay. Any motions for changes to the budget as it is presented? Nope. All right, so we can move forward to the approval of the budget. This section.
I would make a motion, I believe this is the correct one, to approve the budget as proposed by the city manager in the amount of $3,181,636 with the following changes, which it identifies.
All right, and then what we'll do, and we'll do this similarly for the city, but ask staff to read through those changes once more.
Okay.
So Neil, if you could bring that sheet back up, I'm going to run through it one more time. And I apologize for the formality. We just want to be very clear on the record. Okay, with changes that incorporate an increase in property tax expense of $20,000 in the Glenwood Fund, a decrease of reserves of $20,000 in the Glenwood Fund, an increase in interfund loan revenue of $1.5 million in the Downtown Fund, an increase of Blue McKinsey project expense of $1.39 million in the Downtown Fund, an increase of Blue McKinsey contractual services of $110,000 in the Downtown Fund, an increase of the interfund loan principal payment of $850,000 in the Downtown Fund, an increase of interfund loan interest payment of $3,500 in the Downtown Fund, a decrease of reserves of $853,500 in the Downtown Fund, an increase of an environmental assessment expense of $20,000 in the Glenwood Fund, and a decrease of reserves of $20,000 in the Glenwood Fund.
Am I supposed to say that my motion includes this, or how do we do that?
The way you phrased it was to accept that budget with the following adjustments as read by staff.
Okay, thank you.
I'll second it.
Second, all right. All in favor? Aye.
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 All right. Any nays? All right, ayes have it. It has been passed. So next motion.
Next motion. I recommend that the Springfield Urban Renewal Agency Board of Directors request the county assessor provide the maximum amount of revenue for the urban renewal plan areas that may be raised by dividing the taxes under section 1C, Article 9 of the Oregon Constitution and ORS Chapter 457. This motion, I don't know, I hope I'm doing it right here. This motion asks the SEDA board to request the county assessors to provide all the tax revenue the two districts are entitled to under the Oregon Constitution and the Oregon Revised Statutes.
Okay, I'll second that too.
Second, thank you. All in favor, say aye.
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 Any nays? All right, and the ayes have it. So that has also been passed. So that brings us to the conclusion of the SEDA meeting, correct?
Yes, so we can adjourn.
Chair,
Yes.
Chair, I'm sorry to interrupt, but I can't help but feel like I heard in the first motion that the total value referenced was 3.1 million, which I believe was last year's total. This year is just over 3.5 million. I may have misheard that, but I wanted to confirm.
Okay. Yeah,
To bring up the motions, Neil, and let's read through it one more time, just to be safe.
Yeah.
I will. Here.
Am I supposed to do it?
We're going to go through it one more time in a second. He's going to bring it up on the screen.
Okay. You know,
This should be the motion here. The 3.5.
Yep.
I have got the wrong year. I'm sorry about the amount. I'm terribly sorry about that.
So that's okay. So why don't you do this motion again with the
Okay.
correct amount? And then what you could say is with the changes that were detailed by Nathan Bell in the errata worksheet, rather than myself reading through them all over again.
And I printed the whole budget out. So I'm terribly sorry, everybody. I make a motion to approve the budget as proposed by the city manager in the amount of $3,540,940 with the following changes. And we went through that process. Do we need to do that again?
No, just say those changes being the adjustments that the finance director detailed from the errata worksheet.
Okay, that's what I'm saying. So is that good enough?
We'll call it good.
Okay, thank you. Sorry about having the wrong sheet, you guys.
Okay, second.
Second it.
All right, all in favor, say aye.
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 All right, any nays? And the ayes have it. It is passed. So, excellent. Thank you so much, Neil.
Thank you.
All right, so then this will adjourn and we are back in 10 minutes, say?
Yeah, so it looks like it's 6:26. Why don't we meet back at 6:35, 9
Yeah,
minutes?
6:35 sounds good. All right, thank you.
So Luke, one change for you this evening. I told the library that they could go first.
That works for me. That's perfectly fine. That sounds good. Yeah, they were up last, so. I'll pull up. Okay. I believe we are all back. Yep. All right. So I will call to order the meeting of the Springfield City Budget Committee. I want to make sure I have my welcome remarks here. I just want to ask the members of the audience, let them know that they do have time at the end of the meeting for business from the audience, but until then, please stay on mute. If you're joining us with tablet, smartphone, computer, wish to speak during that time, please raise your hand option and you will be called upon. We also have time for submitted emails and everything else. So welcome. All right, and we can do roll call.
Councilors Pitts,
Here.
Mo,
Here.
Rodley,
Here.
Stair, Woodrow,
Here.
Visionary,
Here.
Luke Glenberg,
Here.
George Jesse,
Here.
Darlene Reich,
Here.
Stephen Schmunk,
Here.
Holly Shaper,
Here.
Paul Selby.
Here.
Chair, we have 12 members present and we have a quorum.
Thank you so much. Okay, so we are going to try and get through everything tonight. We have 5 departments and any motions, deliberations, anything past that. So we will try our best so that way everyone here can have their next Tuesday night off. But if needed, we can go into next week. So, but we will try our best. And to start that off, we will have the library and the library director, Emily David.
Actually, if you don't mind pausing for a second,
Yes.
typically do our public hearing on state shared revenue.
Oh, sorry. Yes, I saw. I was trying to pull up. That's what I saw. I was trying to pull that up for some reason. I lost it. Okay.
And Chair, I will give a brief presentation just summarizing the state shared revenue
Yes.
uses and sources before opening the public hearing. So let me share my screen here.
Okay.
And so the purpose of the state shared revenue public hearing is to provide the community with an opportunity to comment on and ask questions about the uses of state shared revenue. All that's required of the public of the committee tonight is to hold a public hearing on this item. But before we do that, I just want to give you a quick rundown of what these revenue sources are and their uses. So the city receives approximately $2 million annually into the general fund, primarily from liquor apportionment, but also some from state shared cigarette apportionment. The city also receives somewhere around $200,000 to $300,000 annually into our special revenue fund associated with the state marijuana apportionment. The thing I want to point out on the marijuana apportionment is that at the time of putting the budget together, Staff estimated about a $275,000 revenue coming in for FY22. But after putting the budget together, staff became aware of the impact of Measure 110 on this revenue source. So that measure changes the way that and the amount that is distributed from the state to the cities for marijuana apportionment. And so this will come up in your city erratum later in the evening, where we'll be proposing a reduction in the revenue from 275,000 to 116,000. So I'm happy to take any questions, but that's it for the presentation. Chair, you can now open the public hearing and take any comment.
Any questions about the shared revenue? Councilor Pishneri?
Just one quick one, if I could, please. The difference in that money, Neil, where did, you said the Senate bill or House bill, was that the one where it legalized controlled substances, and so they diverted what we would normally get to other things?
That's correct, Councilor Pishneri. Measure 110 decriminalized a number of drugs, and then also diverted some of those funds that cities and the state had previously been receiving from marijuana apportionment to drug treatment programs.
That's neat. Okay, well, I don't recall seeing that on the ballot where they would say that that money was going elsewhere, taking it from the cities. That's kind of interesting. Pretty cool. Okay, thanks.
I guess my only question about that was that funding is specifically earmarked for only public, it's public safety, or is it specifically, what exactly is that earmarked for? Because liquor apportionment and the others can be used as general fund. That's a very specific fund, correct?
So the state apportionment dollars, the liquor and cigarette apportionment, it generally goes into the city's general fund, where it's just used for general public services. Historically, the state marijuana apportionment has gone into our special revenue fund and has been dedicated towards typically one-time activities or expenditures that are one-time in nature. I think the one that I saw come up most recently was capital expenditures towards our public safety radio system, LRIG, and that's historically how those funds have been used.
Okay. So I just wanted to clarify that those aren't, from what I recall of the past meetings, is that these weren't funds that we were necessarily counting on as being distributed into the public safety funding every year, and these were a baseline revenue source. These were something else that was very specifically earmarked for only a set number of things because it can't even be used in all areas of the public safety, if I'm correct. It is controlled in even the financing aspect.
I would probably have to look to Nathan for clarity on the specific requirements around that.
Yeah, I think what's challenging is that how it's the requirement of its use. We have plenty of expenditures that basically would satisfy that requirement. So if I could guess at what Councilor Pishneri was implying, it's funding that we needed, and we don't want.
Okay. Yeah, it's an unfortunate loss, but okay. Any other questions? Comments? No? Okay. So what else is needed from us right now?
So Chair, if you could open the public hearing, I've now allowed members of the audience to raise their hand if they would like to provide comment.
Excellent. Okay.
And I'm not seeing any members of the audience raise their hand, and I have no written or email comment on this either.
Okay.
So you can go ahead and close the public hearing whenever you'd like.
All right. yeah, let's go ahead and close the public hearing and move on to the next steps of our budget
Thank
committee.
you.
Thank you. Okay. All right. So now we can move on to the departments, correct?
Right.
Thank you. All right. So first up, we will have the library. Library Director Emily David.
Chair, I will bring up Emily here. Oh,
Thank you.
Good evening. And for those of you that don't know me, I am Emily David, the director of the Springfield Public Library and the Springfield History Museum. And it's my pleasure to be here to answer any questions that you have.
Does anybody have any questions that they had for the library? During the presentation? Yes, Councilor Stair.
Not a question, just a comment. I want to say how much the library has meant to my community out in Ward 4 and everybody that I talk to who has gone to the library to borrow a book. This is a treasure of our community, and I want to thank you and everyone for your hard work.
Well, thank you, Councilor Stair, on behalf of our wonderful staff. Appreciate that kind comments.
Okay. Councilor Rodley.
So I'm going to join on the admiration wagon. And Emily already knows this. I adore the library and I would love to give you all the money. And I've just been very appreciative of all the adaptations that have happened during the year with COVID, the additions. I'm excited about the printing. I know that, you know, so many things have gone online and just the way you all pivoted and continued to do a lot of diverse and culturally diverse programming. I just want to give you all the kudos in a very public way and let you know how much I appreciate the library and the museum, which hasn't, you know, we haven't been able to go to the museum, but we will.
Again, thank you very much. And you will be so excited when you see the updated museum. It's really fabulous. So thank you.
All right. And Holly.
I'm also going to pile on to this, and I just wanted to say how amazing it was to see the creativity of the library over COVID. The book bags were incredible. We use them in our family, and it was just so nice to have a sudden influx of age-appropriate reading material for our child. I know last week we heard public comment that expressed a similar thing, so thank you.
Thank you again. And once again, I just have to give the kudos to the staff. We have an incredible staff in our department, and they're so creative. And you know, they're in this job because they love to serve and help people, and that's been difficult this year. So knowing that the book bags have been a big success, very helpful, is really great to know. Thanks.
Marilee.
Yes, I'm going to jump on the same bandwagon. Of course, I've been there for a long time, but I'm one of the ones that took advantage of putting a hold on books and coming in and picking them up and enjoying that immensely. And when you're now you're living by yourself, those books mean a lot. So it was very much appreciated to have those books and be able to borrow them. And especially now with the new book drop out in Thurston, it was a lot easier and more convenient that way too. One thing I want to mention is I have a cousin who's a librarian in Mississippi. She's been very impressed with our library and what we're doing. She's doing a lot of some of the things, reading online and things like that. They're involved in the same type of things. I'm guessing are probably a national, suggestions. But she's also been impressed by different things that have cropped up from our library that I've been able to share through Facebook. So well done, you guys, well done.
Thank you, Councilor Woodrow. Really appreciate it. So it's been a tough year, but we've really been creative and been able to continue to serve the community in the best way that we can. So looking forward to getting back to regular services, but yeah, thank you very much.
Any other questions? I didn't have questions about basically, I know fee service isn't a huge portion of the revenue annually, but I also noticed that this was dropped off because one, the library was closed, and two is the switch to integrating more of the electronic materials. How does that I don't want to try to focus as much on, you're using fees to collect revenue or anything. Obviously, that's not the point, and you want to do, but that is a element of the budget moving forward, is that you're no longer, how do you envision the next couple years? Are you going to try to focus as much on the electronics based on the success that you saw during COVID? And how does that transition, I guess?
So first of all, we haven't been charging fines during the pandemic. So that did play a role in our revenues. It's not a big revenue, but it did mean a drop. And that was just, that was supported by council and city leadership in a very difficult time for people. So we have not been charging fees. We're still not, we're getting ready to start that again in the new fiscal year. We also didn't charge for the our out of city digital cards that people signed up for. So digital resources are expensive and they are in high demand. So this year, as part of the budget, we did have to cut our periodicals budget completely in the 100 fund. So we went from about 60 periodicals to we'll have about 14 this next year. And that's because we are continuing to have pressure to pay for additional electronic resources and databases, which are in high demand, but we haven't seen an increase in our budget for collections. So we do supplement those database subscriptions from our Gift and Memorial, which is our funding that comes from grants and donations and also our support groups. So we anticipate that those costs will continue to rise, as well as there's been, inflation in, hardback books as well. And so we're facing that pressure as well. And we live in a time where there's an expectation that we have a digital component as well as an analog component. We're kind of riding, two generations. Some expect all digital, some expect the other. So, it's just part of the pressure of our budget at this point is to try and fill those needs as best we can on both sides of it. Does that answer your question?
No, it does. Yeah, I guess it's just, I mean, the library is such a pivotal institution in the city. It's just so necessary. It provides so many services. It's underappreciated, honestly. It's used so well throughout the community. I mean, I've seen elementary school librarians were coming in saying that the Springfield Library was their resource, and it changed the way that they did everything. And so I don't want to see that lost. I want to see how, and I appreciated as much as the periodical loss is unfortunate, is those are the types of things that I think if you consolidate in those areas, provide success to growing the new services that are in some demand. And like I say, I'm aware of the two groups that you're trying to do, because I have one family member that was so excited that he found out that you had DVDs at the library versus the two other family members that wanted to share audiobooks, and they did it through your online service. So yeah, I do understand. So I guess that would be my only question. And you raised the point of out of area electronic cards. Is that something that will be charged for in the future?
Yes, so
Okay.
the digital cards came about because of the pandemic. And how can we couldn't get people in to sign up for cards. So how could we give them access to the library? And so we started the digital cards, which gives them access to our electronic resources. And we could do that without vetting their information, because they can't really walk away with, 10 books worth $300 when they're doing it electronically. We were given permission to expand that to include the urban growth boundary just because of the situation of the pandemic. Now that we are moving back into more regular services. Starting in the fiscal year, we will be charging for those. They'll be $60. I think it was on the, that went to the council. It's a new fee for us this year. And we based it on the library advisory board I worked with them, and we looked at the cost of a full access card, which gives you access to the physical collection, the electronic resources, and our public computers is $90 a year. It just went up, it'll go up to $95, but we based it on that because the digital cards give access to 2 out of those 3. So you can have access to electronic resources and the public computers, internet computers. And so it'll be $60 a month. Versus, or excuse me, $60 a year versus $90 a year, or $5 a month. Sorry,
Yeah.
Which is quite a deal when you look
It
at
is.
how much an audio book is.
One of the, does that include, you mentioned database uses, and that's something that I'm familiar, that would be included in that?
Right. So all of our databases, including our downloadable books, so, and then like the Mango languages and all of the learning resources that we have that are digital, that you can access that with a digital card. You just can't check out physical items, which really works for a lot of people. You know, that's really what they need.
Especially if you're out of area people, that it's just physically, more convenient to do the digital cards than having to, So, okay. Yeah, no, that was my only question. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions for the library?
Thank you all.
Thank you. Thank you, Emma. All right. So next up on my list that I closed here. Next up, I have the fire department. And that would be.
Chair, I'm pulling up Chris Heppel now.
Perfect. Thank you.
Good evening, Mayor, Council, Board Committee members, and Chair of the Board of the Budget Committee. Good evening, Chris Heppel. I'm the interim fire chief for Eugene Springfield Fire, and happy to answer any questions that you may have about the fire department.
Okay. Do we have any questions for the fire department at this time? Okay. No questions. Oh, sorry, Councilor Pishnari.
Hey, Chief, did with that fire in September, did that require some adjustments for this year's budget based on recovery, or was that something we got most all that back from state fed? And I know we had to pick up some on our own, but we got most of that all back.
Yes, I would say we've got the absolute disproportion of it back. So that particular fire, which is a holiday farm fire, was declared a conflagration. Right. And under that, the Office of State Fire Marshal then mobilizes resources, and then the funding for those resources, which we send to the fire, are reimbursed in whole. Also, the backfill that would be required for those that are deployed to the fire are reimbursed as well. And then that also includes any apparatus that we may send we sent on that particular fire were reimbursed for their time and use at an hourly rate. So we had very little money, and I suppose we're going to pick up, 98, 99% of that cost will be reimbursed, or if it hasn't already.
Okay, that's good. That's what I thought. I just didn't know how far along that had gone along. So, okay. Good news. And by the way, still, again, good work, excellent work on that fire. And for the crews that went up there, I know that we were basically at the spearhead of that, the Springfield guys. And my hat's off to them. They did a fantastic job.
Thank you. I'll let them know again.
Councilor Rodley.
I also didn't want to give all of my love and appreciation to the library. I also wanted to let you know that I deep appreciation for all of the work of our fire and life safety during the holiday farm fires and beyond. I think we have just an amazing team, and it's a lean team. And I know that we are in transition as we look for a new fire chief. So I might not get a chance to tell you, Chief Heppel, how much I appreciate the work that you've done and the work of the team. So please pass it along as well. It was a big year, and thank you.
It was a big year, and thank you very much. I appreciate the comment, Councilor.
Councilor Stair.
Yep, just wanted to express my appreciation for your role in fighting the holiday farm fire too. I know that the effort to fight that fire was frequently understaffed, and I wanted to find out if there's any plan in place that we could participate in that would make it safer and more effective in fighting the fire next time.
So this is a classic case of preparedness, and preparedness goes down to the community and then also at the state level. So the Governor's Office on Wildland Preparedness has put forth, I believe it's House or Senate Bill 672, which is moving through right now, which has a lot of recommendations in 4 primary categories or buckets for that response. Doing more work with fuels reductions, doing more of our Firewise communities, working with local crews in terms of resources, et cetera. One of the things to remember with this, so this is kind of my public safety stint here, is a lot of it has to do with the private owner landowners preparation. So we can do quite a bit in our state forests and our national forests and our private forests, and we do through thinning and just forest management. But personal and private landowners can do a lot as well in their communities, especially if you're in one of the more threatened communities in our neighborhood. So I would encourage folks to reach out to our website at Eugene Springfield Fire. There's a lot of really good information out there, and we're hitting it pretty hard right now on the airways and in the media with wildland preparedness. So this year, honestly, I'm a little nervous. So for this year coming up, we're already, if you didn't know, the National Weather Service declared Northwest Oregon and Southwest Washington an extreme drought. We'll be getting a briefing on that here later this week. And we're seeing fire season is predicted to be 5 to 6 weeks ahead of schedule this year. And so we're going to be busy this year. And so blessed to have the resources that we do have, but we could certainly use more with the support of our state elected officials and the governor.
Thank you.
Councilor Mo.
Talking about fire season, what about fireworks in the summer?
I don't recommend them.
Well, actually, I've been asked by constituents if they can have fireworks or not. And I want to tell them they can't, but what is the real rules?
So that is based on what council allows. And right now, fireworks are certainly allowed within the urban growth boundary of the city of Springfield.
Maybe the council could take a look at that later. Thank you very much.
Any other questions for fire department right now? Okay. Thank you, Chief Hopkins.
Chair, I'll go ahead and bring up Tom Boyott from the Community Development Division.
I think you muted yourself, Luke.
I did, thank you.
Good evening, Budget Committee. My name is Tom Boyott. I'm the Division Director of Community Development within Development and Public Works. That's a triumvirate of environmental services, operations, and community development. And hopefully you've had a chance to review the budget presentation and look at the material in the budget. And I'm here to answer any questions you have about our operating budget in community development. Well, to do my best to answer questions that you have, and also to address any questions on the capital side, the city's capital programs embedded in community development. And I believe Jeff Pascal, our city engineer, is also with us tonight. Sometimes questions in our area get a little complex, and I may ask for some time to actually research the correct answer and make sure you have the best answer we're able to give you. So with that, any questions?
George?
I'm not sure if it's, I can't remember if it's in the capital budget or not, but it seemed like there was a program intended for new evaluations for pavement management system.
I'm going to defer that to operations and Brian Conlon. I can't remember. if
Okay,
he-
I can ask it then.
Yeah, they are our asset managers. They operate, maintain, and preserve our systems in the infrastructure categories that the city owns.
Thank you.
Other questions for DPW Community Development? All right, I'm not seeing any questions. All right, thank you, Tom.
Thank you, Chair.
So we'll go ahead and move on to DPW operations then.
Chair Brian Conlon should be coming up here.
Perfect, thank you.
Oh, there we are.
There you are.
We're looking. Good evening. I'm going to get centered in here. I'm Brian Conlon. I'm the Development and Public Works Operations Director, and appreciate time with the Budget Committee tonight to go over a couple things that we need to probably address that weren't addressed in our presentation. I wanted to bring to your attention at the time of the presentation, we had not yet been approved to add an additional FTE for a traffic engineer that will help us address resource needs. And the resource needs are in the capital group with design and construction elements, and as well starting to address antiquated concerns or needs with our traffic signal systems. Additional opportunity as well that we were given is to propose for a new Vector, which is a cleaning machine that we utilize for wastewater, stormwater, and also excavation. And it'll help us address some critical needs there, but also help us to bolster the current work that we are doing. I also wanted to mention too that during this COVID pandemic, that although it may seem a negative occurrence, it's turned out to demonstrate our ability to adapt and our staff's working through and actually being in some cases more productive during these last 14 months. So with that, I'd open it up to any questions you may have for us.
George?
I guess the question that I'll ask of you then is, have you been using an existing pavement management system to evaluate road surfaces?
A really good question, committee member Jesse. We had we had done a transition about 3 years ago or 4 years ago now with our former Hanson pavement management system. Actually, it was our information management system. And we had an embedded pavement management system in that. We lost the ability to access that. And so we're currently developing field tools and applications that are helping us collect the data. And what we hope to do during this fiscal year is to begin re-implementing development of a pavement management system. We have an obligation with House Bill 2017 to report what the current conditions are of our roadways and streets. And we're able to do that, but we're having to handcraft and work through getting the data in a way that is not as effective in the past. And in fact, it's difficult for us to prioritize our recommendations around where we'd like work to be done or where we think work needs to be done. So that is something that's on our radar and we're moving forward with.
Okay, thanks. I guess I asked the question because it seems to me, and I'm not integrally involved with your process, that it's real easy to spend a significant amount of money on the planning, administration, within some of these enterprise funds and not get much actual maintenance activities done. And that seems to be the case to me in viewing surface conditions on roads. It's a comment I get most from neighbors and people I meet in Springfield, is the poor condition of many of the roads, especially some of the residential and collector streets. I recognize that you're making some significant improvements on major arterials, but is it at the expense of the residential streets that are in very poor condition in a lot of cases?
That's a really important observation. So if you look back to 2008, it was really the last time that we did what I would consider a robust slurry seal project. And that was a result of revenue losses that we saw over a long period of time and tough decisions by the council and us as staff with recommendations going forward. So we really have not proactively done preventive maintenance and well, within the last 2 years, we've turned the corner a little bit back on addressing the residential streets. And we began, if you remember in the presentation, we doubled the amount of crack sealing we perform. During this last year, we plan to increase again this year our capability of getting to about 20 miles of linear crack. We hope to seal up. And then this year we have planned in the current fiscal year and is actually being queued up through the county, a slurry seal project that is approximately 350,000, maybe up to 400,000 in all wards, sites that we will begin doing the work that you call out. So sealing up those residential streets.
Okay, thank you.
Councilor Rodley?
So I'm spreading the love. So I definitely tell everybody how much I love all our DPW. But one of the things I wanted to call out this year is that I have really appreciated the increased messaging and storytelling and public relations that we've been doing around these projects, because I think that I'm probably not alone in that I think many people don't realize how important the work of the operations and the rest of our Department of Public Works and folks are, and all of the ways that it affects their everyday. And this messaging is so important in sharing that story and, sharing the work that we're doing on the Mohawk and all of the places. So I just wanted to call that out, that I appreciate the increased social media, the increased presence, because I think it tells the story of the services of the city. So thank you.
Appreciate it very much. We were granted the ability to hire a new communications coordinator a little over a year ago. And that was one of the key objectives, was to do a better job connecting, what we do and what the citizens or the community see us do, so they can understand what they're paying for one. And, like the Rosa Parks lighting and seeing people working in the sewers, and you pay fees and this is what you're getting. And so that's one of our endeavors, is to try and better connect that communication.
Holly?
Thank you. And I apologize if I addressed this to the wrong. If you're not the right person, I get DPW a little bit confused with the different arms, if you will. First, I wanted to also say thank you. The brush clearing on in bike lanes and public areas, parks, the sidewalks and parks have really helped with allowing for maintaining social distance while walking, and also keeping, me from getting hit in the face with branches while I'm riding my bike. So I really appreciate the work that the department does for that. And then I was curious, you mentioned a new engineer being hired, I believe. And I'm wondering if that will allow for the city to begin installing leading pedestrian indicators so that people walking will have a little bit of a head start at lights for safety related reasons. And then I was also thinking back to last week when, I think it was last week or the week before, when we were talking about the importance the city is placing on diversity, equity, and inclusion. And just wanted to say that I'm looking forward to seeing how DPW sort of addresses equitable access to infrastructure for all modes of transportation, hopefully through some separated facilities. But yeah, that was my question, and then 2 statements, and many thanks.
Regarding the engineer, it's possible that the engineer will be working on those types of activities. There's already a current engineer that is working on some of that now. And so once the staff person comes on, we'll assess their abilities right away and trying to get the most out of the staff, the current staff will have then. And so that's something maybe we could circle back with you on if you have other questions about it. What was the second thing you noted?
I was just noting the focus on diversity, equity, and inclusion, and thinking about that in terms of access to infrastructure, and doing reading about like separated facilities for different modes of transportation for safety and access, especially thinking about we're going into drought, the climate crisis, fires, and encouraging different modes of transportation to maybe help mitigate some of that future.
It's interesting you bring this up because it came up last night in the presentation somewhat similarly. And so the answer is yes, as far as modes of transportation, and doing the best we can to address accommodations for ADA. And but regarding fire, that's another one that we'll take note of. And we have a working agreement with an IGA with Willamette Lane. And so we coalesce with a lot of the multi-path work and cleaning along those edges. And then of course, there's the stormwater facilities as well that have trails and paths around them. So I don't know if that fully answers your question, but
I think it does for now. Thank you.
George?
Slightly in response to those comments, I guess adding more items to the demands on some of the enterprise funds will, in my view, dilute some of the maintenance activities that are needed. We're also seeing that as more FTE are shifted from general fund to the enterprise funds. It looks like there's a number of those through different parts of the organization. And I think Public Works has demonstrated or identified that there is significant maintenance needs. And if we just pile new stuff on, we're never going to catch up. So I see that as problematic. If there's new programs, maybe that needs to go through a capital or a project rather than make demands on operations that are behind already.
Well, you're speaking to, one of our objectives, our baseline objectives is to, as effectively as we can maintain all the built infrastructure and physical assets. And Nathan in his cursory budget presentation talked about structural imbalance with some of the funding mechanisms, and the street fund is one of those. And so I will say this, we've consolidated our programs from 27 to 19 this year. And we have, I think, a really good staff of managers that are looking at doing the best we can to prioritize our maintenance to get the most out of the useful life of each asset. The thing about it is there's a long list of assets. And I think we're in the same boat as so many other, entities, so many other cities. And you spoke to one concerning one for me personally, because I was the at that time, street maintenance supervisor for a period of 12 years, where we were able to stay ahead of that curve and not have much of a backlog of rehabilitation needs. And so we hear you, and I'm encouraged. I will say the council approved 7 people being hired 16 months ago. And what Councilor Rodley just spoke to, though, is we are trying to do the best we can to gain the confidence of the community that work is hitting the ground and that we're actually applying that staff directly to maintaining what we have. Does that somewhat answer your question? I don't disagree with your observation at all. It is for me, it's a money challenge, but it's also a challenge for us as overseers and staff leaders to do the best we can to prioritize to get the most mileage out of the money that we are approved for.
Yes, it does. I recognize there's a lot of competing interests for a fixed amount of money. I just wanted to make sure that it was heard that maintenance is important of existing infrastructure. And as we add more demands onto that, it's going to diminish what's available for maintaining what we have, whether it's streets, sewers, parks, facilities, whatever. But thank you.
I agree with your observation.
Councilor Pishneri?
Yeah, this is a lot of policy discussion. And I'm okay with that, but again, this is a lot of policy discussion. A lot of it is presented to council for council decision making and to guide public works and to provide them the roadmap, so to speak, on how to move forward. But I'd want to try to, if I can, I know it's not necessarily my position in this committee, but I'd sure like to really boil down to the budget committee process.
Thank you, Councilor Pishneri. George?
Yeah, I can understand that, but for appointed budget committee members, it's probably our only opportunity to give a little bit of input about those. And I will try to direct it towards the budgetary matters before us when we make motions for adoption of the budget.
Oh, don't get me wrong, Jesse or George, that wasn't directed necessarily to you at all. It's all right. I'm just saying, just in general.
Okay.
All right. Any other questions for DPW operations? This actually raised something that I've been thinking about in the past, is the gas tax funding. That would be your operations, or?
We receive state funding through fuel taxation, as well local, 3 pennies per gallon, 3 cents per gallon.
Okay, so I just want to kind of get an idea that I know that we had an attempt at it, at raising that revenue fund in the past through the vote that did not pass. But the other element of that is basically the changing technology of cars for better fuel mileage, electronic cars, everything like that. How is it that that fund is trying to basically recuperate those lost, not necessarily dollar for dollar, but percentage that was coming in versus lost in the past? So what's the plan moving forward for recuperating that money, and how much are we looking at, I guess, is the idea.
Well, to answer your question, I think really it's the state legislature that will be working on that equation to capture alternative source revenue from electric, hydrogen, or whatever it may be. And so, but what you're identifying with fuel tax is it is pretty flat per se. And of course, it's been in a downturn with less drivers during COVID. So it does impact significantly. Neil Obringer could probably provide information on what our revenue loss was or over the period of COVID, but it has impacted our reserves. We've had a discussion about it recently.
Yeah, and that funding is a good portion of your street fund, correct?
Correct. We don't utilize general fund.
Yeah.
Some cities have that benefit. We're not positioned that way. We have a hard time maintaining our facilities. And as I spoke earlier, that was discussed by Nathan, is just that imbalance. But we rely on those two sources of funding for street side work, anything having to do with right of way involving streets.
And then my other question is, I guess, moving forward with the hopes of a recovery in the local economy, building back up, is that means theoretically the front desk at operations gets busier. Is that a fair guesstimate from my perspective?
I guess I didn't understand.
Sorry. So basically with the economic recovery, we're going to have more, the idea is more building, more rebuilding. That means more building plans, everything else that needs to get approved through the front desk of, or any element of the DPW for any new construction, anything like that, even residential. So I guess the point I'm getting at and I can't find it, but I thought I saw something about that the shifting of FTE within the department away from the front desk and trying to utilize more online resources for the average citizen to, even if it's in the first steps or if it's just fact finding for them. That's my question, is how do you see that moving forward, and the allocation of those FTE resources towards, streamlining it as much as possible without, putting as many people front desk is my thoughts.
That is actually a CMD. So
Gotcha.
That's a question for Tom Boyott.
No, I appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah.
So, okay. Any other questions for Brian and operations? All right. Thank you.
Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you. Okay. Then we will do the final department, which is environmental services.
Chair, I'm pulling up Matt Stouter now.
Perfect. Thank you.
Good evening, Mayor, Council, and Budget Committee members. It's my pleasure to be here. I trust you probably saw my presentation, so I'll keep my remarks brief and answer any questions you might have. My name is Matt Stouter. I serve as the Environmental Services Division Director. And ESD is responsible for the administrative functions of the Metropolitan Wastewater Management Commission, which is the regional entity that collects and treats wastewater for Eugene and Springfield. Additionally, we oversee our stormwater program here for the city of Springfield, and the two permits that the city's party to. One is our MS4 stormwater permit, and then collectively our joint wastewater permit is issued to MWC Springfield and Eugene. Both of those permits we expect will be renewed this year. In fact, we'll learn tomorrow whether or not we're getting a final new stormwater permit, and then we expect that our wastewater permit will be issued sometime towards the end of Q4 of this year. So with that, as I said, I'm available for any questions that you might have.
Any questions for Matt? All right. Okay. Thank you so much, Matt.
All right. Thank you.
Excellent. Okay. So we made it through all the departments. Great work, everyone. So next steps are we need to go through Holly.
Is it possible to ask questions from departments that we've already talked to?
Nathan, are they here or?
Well, that question's to you, Luke, but yes, I mean, as a budget committee, you run this as you see fit.
Gotcha. Yeah, who did you have questions for?
I think I have a question for HR and then a follow-up question for the police department.
Okay, yeah, we can run those through really quick. That's fine.
Thank you.
Yeah, so we'll start off with Jane.
Hello, everybody.
Hi, Jane.
Hi, Holly.
Sorry, I had a question, and you might be the wrong person. You can tell me that you're the wrong person, that I need to ask someone else. But I heard in public comment last week, and I think the week before as well, people asking about where our insurance liability deductible is pulled from within the budget. And so I wanted to ask that question.
And Nate might be the better expert on this particular subject. So there is a split. I know that I think this was covered earlier. So there's a percentage, a large percentage, obviously, that comes directly from the police department, and then there's an individual charge that is charged to each of the departments based on an FTE allotment.
Okay.
I don't have that exact breakdown.
We have a structure to we want departments to have some skin in the game. So we require cover the first X number of dollars. I believe it's $10,000 towards a deductible. And if it goes above and beyond, or if there's budgetary issues, we typically have some money set aside in an insurance fund, which is raised through an internal charge. It's a structure that we're constantly revisiting, trying to find equity and a way to influence behavior.
Thank you. I appreciate that clarity, and I apologize if I missed it earlier.
No, absolutely. Happy to answer the question again.
All right. Does that answer your questions from HR?
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
And then we'll pull up interim chief. Matt, yes.
Hi. Hello again. Sorry, I am still trying to wrap my head around the K9 discussion that we had last week and better understanding sort of where those dollars come from and where they go. And so I believe last week we talked about 800 deployments in 2020 approximately for K9s, leading to $850,000 in asset seizures, of which a percentage is brought into the city as funds, but not, I don't believe it's brought into the general fund. It's a more restricted spending. And so the questions I had from that, given that the combined cost for K9 and Drug Dog is from the general fund only is $871,863 per year, or for the proposed fiscal year 22. I'm wondering is the majority of that asset seizure, or is that what it's called? Yeah, is the majority of that asset seizure, is that the canine unit or the drug dog, or is it a combination?
Nathan, do you want to try to answer that question regarding the monetary piece of it, or do you want me to have Jessica Crawford answer?
I would love to have Jessica come up because this is the stuff that she lives every day.
Correct.
Chair Jessica should be coming up now.
You know.
Hello there, this is Jessica. And
Did you get the question, Jessica, or do you need Holly to repeat it?
oh no, I did get the question. So the seizure money is typically realized by the drug dog program, but that doesn't mean that there isn't some type of seizure realized from the detectives themselves, which is program 1154. So a majority is drug dog. Some asset forfeiture is realized through just investigations in general 1154. And as I believe Chief Dayward addressed at our prior meeting, is that the amount realized really is dependent on the level of contribution by the various entities or organizations involved in a particular investigation. And I don't know what the actual calculation or what the metrics are, how they identify that, but typically that is something that the DEA or federal entity kind of oversees that process and determines the level of apportionment of the total seized funds. And I guess just as a parting, or since it's my opportunity to speak, that there is one note that I, within the program 1148, which is K9 unit, and 1149 drug dog, that to try to realize just some more standardized entry into the police budget in the detailed program pages, I think you will notice that the change in FTE personnel costs, that is purely an administrative change. There's no change in level of service. There's no change in anything of that nature. It was just how the funds were allocated this year. I was trying to make it cleaner so it wasn't a 50-50 split between patrol and the K9 unit as we had done in the past. So although those K9 officers as well as drug dog officer, they are assigned to patrol, we were just trying to make it a little bit clearer rather than giving partial credit to different programs.
Okay, that makes sense. And then following up, just one other question, thinking about the increase in our liability deductibles this coming plan year. Do drug dogs, this was not clear in the policy, so I apologize. I did try to do my homework. Are drug dogs also responsible for uses of force, or are those mostly within the K9 unit, which I'm trying to understand the two programs. And so I thank you for your patience.
Well, both the protection dogs and the canine dogs, their primary role as a dog, what they're used for is primarily their nose. So the drug dogs, that's their only role, is sniffing out contraband. So that they aren't a use of force factor.
Okay, thank you. That provides a lot of clarity. I appreciate it.
Did those answer your questions, Holly?
Yes, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, thank you to Jane, Matt, and Jessica for your answering those questions. Okay. All right, so next we have business from the audience, correct?
We put an intermission in there. I'll leave it up to you whether you want to use that intermission or move straight on to business from the audience.
I think let's just move on to business from the audience. So, okay.
So, Chair, I've now allowed members of the audience to raise their hand. We'll just give them a moment and I'll let you know who has a desire to speak.
Perfect, thank you.
So, Chair, the first member of the audience is Jennifer Potter.
Okay.
Nobody after Jennifer. So, Jennifer, you should now be able to unmute on your end.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Thank you. So I'm a resident of Ward 3, and I just wanted to thank you all for the explanation of the different parts of the budget. That's been very helpful. And just my question is about the police liability and you know, how is the city going to handle the large deductible, and growing number of claims against the police department? Just how is that going to work moving forward in the budget? That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Jennifer. Do we have others, Neil?
Chair, I don't show any other members of the audience, and I also have no written or email comment.
Okay. All right, then we'll go ahead and close business from the audience and move on to our next steps, which are just
next step is we're going to move on to the city budget deliberations and approval. So similar to what we did with SEDA,
yes,
I'm going to bring out a
yes.
We ready to move on to that?
Yes, we are. Thank you.
Okay. So again, we usually bring up a blank sheet, but this year there are some items that came to our attention after we put the budget together, but before we'll be adopting it. And so we would have included these if we had known of them at the time. So we've pre-populated the worksheet, and I will run through those with you and do something similar where I'll ask for a separate motion to accept those changes before we move on to any motions that you might have. As a budget committee, anyone is able to make a motion for an adjustment to the budget. It'll take a second, and then it's going to take 7 positive votes for that to find its way onto the RADA. At the end of the evening, we're going to have a series of motions again. One of them will be adopting the budget as it was put forward by the city manager with some language accepting the changes that we're putting forward through that errata. So with that, I'm going to have Neil, and it looks like he's already started it. Bring up the worksheet.
Nathan, you should be able to see it on your end.
I'm not seeing it yet. Is there anyone else?
It's spinning.
Sorry about that. Let me try that one more time. How about now?
Oh, now we can. Excellent. Thank you. So, you know, I mentioned to you when we went through the SEDA budget that we have an agreement with the city for an interfund loan. And so now you get to see the other half of the loan that we just appropriated for SEDA earlier in the evening. So the first item is to increase the interfund loan expense to SEDA. This comes out of our Fund 420, a capital projects fund, by $1.5 million and reduce our reserves in the same fund by $1.5 million. The second item is budgeting for that repayment by SEDA. So this is increasing revenue in the same capital projects fund by $853,500 and then putting it back into the reserve. So increasing the reserve by $853,500. The third item is related to a phone implementation project that we're now currently in the middle of, and we have a recabling portion to that project. We have $200,000 budgeted, but the project came in higher than expected. And so we're appropriating another $100,000 so that we can complete that cabling project. So increasing network recabling project in our vehicle and equipment fund 713, $100,000, and then decreasing the IT equipment replacement reserve by $100,000. And then lastly, in the state revenue shared portion that we did earlier in the evening, we talked about how our marijuana apportionment has been decreased due to legislation or measure. So this is decreasing marijuana apportionment revenue in the special revenue fund 204 by $159,000 and decreasing reserves by the same $159,000. And I believe that's all we have for pre-populated errata. So with that, I'm looking for a motion to accept these changes.
I would make a motion to accept these changes that you spoke of, fiscal year 22 city budget errata worksheet that we just looked at.
Second.
Okay. Then we'll just do a voice vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any noes? The ayes have it. It has been approved.
Okay, so at this point, we're going to open it back up to you. I'm going to turn it over to you, Luke, to accept any motions if you want to make any adjustments to our fiscal year 22 proposed city budget.
Okay. George?
I don't know if I need to make a motion to approve the entire budget, but I would like to suggest a following change, and that is to keep the 7 FTE in the city manager's office allocated to the same funds as in fiscal year 21. This is in line with my opinion that we're seeing a significant change from general fund costs being shifted into enterprise funds, which I think is goes to the detriment of being able to maintain those facilities that those enterprise funds are designated for.
Okay. Do I hear a second to that motion?
Seconded.
Okay. So we'll do a voice vote.
So before we do a voice vote, if you don't mind, I'm going to just interject here. We eliminated a position in DPW that supervised those divisions, and that responsibility is now with our assistant city manager. So it is your prerogative on whether you would like to do this. This will be a recommendation to council. Council can also make a change back if they choose to at the point of adoption. But I just want to recognize this isn't a subsidy, George. I appreciate your sentiment, but I want to be very clear on this. This specifically is not a subsidy.
Thank you, Nate. Okay, we'll do a voice vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any nays?
Nay.
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 Okay, so we do need to do a roll call vote now.
Councilors Pitts,
Aye.
Mo,
No.
Rodley,
No.
Stair,
Aye.
Woodrow,
No.
Visionary,
No.
Luke Glenberg,
No.
George Jesse,
Aye.
Darlene Reich,
No.
Stephen Schmunk,
No.
Holly Shaper,
No.
Paul Selby.
Nay.
Chair, it looks like we have 3 ayes, I believe the motion fails.
Thank you. Okay, do we have any other motions?
Are we ready to approve the budget? Are you ready?
We have one more motion that is being proposed.
Okay. Is that me or what?
No, or I don't know, maybe it is.
Okay, go ahead. Sorry.
Sorry. I would like to move to decrease the police budget by $250,000 from personnel services and increase the interfund transfer to the insurance fund by $250,000.
Do I have a second? Okay. No second. Motion is not going to be added. Thank you. Okay. Any other motions before we move on to the? Okay.
Ready for me now?
I am now ready for you, Councilor Mo.
Okay, there's 5 motions here.
Yes.
That's okay.
And
before
before you get into it, I just want to make sure, Nate, you will have to read off the errata, correct? So just stop us whenever you're ready.
So we're going to bring up the motions first.
Okay.
And we're going to have to wait at a certain point to switch back over to the errata so that I can read those. This one doesn't have an amount, but I want to give you the current motion this time, Councilor Mo.
Thank you. Sorry. Thank you for that. I make a motion to approve the budget as proposed by the city manager with the following changes. And staff should recite the changes as we've captured tonight.
Yes.
That's for you now. Is that right?
Yes, and I'm going to wait for Neil to just switch over to that.
Okay.
I should have them memorized, but I don't. All right, so the first one was an increase in the interfund loan expense to SEDA from Fund 420 in the amount of $1,500,000 and a reduction to the reserves in Fund 420 in the amount of $1,500,000. The second item was to increase revenue in Fund 420 from the repayment of that loan in the amount of $853,500 and to increase reserves in Fund 420 in the amount of $853,500. The third item was to increase the network recabling project in Fund 713 by $100,000 and to decrease the IT equipment replacement reserve in Fund 713 by $100,000. And then the fourth item was to decrease the marijuana apportionment revenue in Fund 204 by $159,000 and to decrease reserves in Fund 204 by $159,000.
And my motion includes those changes.
Second.
All right. So we'll do votes. All in favor, say aye.
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 All right. Any nays? All right. The ayes have it. It's passed.
Okay, my next motion
Yes.
is a motion to direct council to levy a property tax for the 2021/22 fiscal year at a rate of $4.7. Okay, 4.7. I don't know how to read this. $4.77403 per thousand. That was awkward. Was that understandable? Okay.
Perfect.
Okay.
Second.
Excellent. All in favor, say aye.
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 Any nays? All right, ayes have it, it is passed.
Next motion. A motion to direct council to levy a special operating local option property tax for the 2021/22 fiscal year at a rate of 0.38 cents per thousand. It's the local fire option levy.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
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 Any nays?
Okay, we're moving on.
Yes.
I've screwed up this time, haven't I? A motion to direct council to levy a special operating local option property tax for the 2021/22 fiscal year at a rate of $1.40 per thousand. It's the police and court local option levy.
Second?
I second.
All right, perfect. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any nays? And the ayes carry.
Last
Next,
motion, a motion to levy an additional $4,257,597 for the retirement of the city's bonded indebtedness. That sounds pretty good.
Second.
all right, all in favor, say aye.
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 Any nays? All right, and the motion is passed. Okay, so let me just double check. So that is now we have covered all of the legal steps that we need for our budget committee.
Correct. And
Right.
so you can adjourn.
All right, I just want to say thank you to everyone for this year. I know it was not easy. We did very, very well, and we got through it in 3 days, which I think is a great accomplishment given all the challenges that we had. So thank you, everyone.
Thank
and
you,
have a wonderful
Luke.
night.
Yeah.
We had a
And
great
Leadership.
Before
We had a-
everyone leaves, I just want to mention we have one ward where the term is expiring. That's for Paul Selby, but that is your first term. So we hope to see you back in the application pool for next year's budget process. And I just want to thank all the committee members for volunteering your time. It's been a pleasure.
We had a great chair. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.